Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Cooperative Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. Welcome. We have a beautiful day here in Washington, D.C. And on the phone with us this morning is Mr. John Holdsclaw. Mr. Holdsclaw is the Senior Vice President of Corporate Affairs for the National Cooperative Bank. Good morning, John.
Vernon, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing just great. Are you all ready for Christmas?
We're getting there. We got a few more last-minute things to get, but we're pretty close.
But don't worry about wrapping my gift, John. I don't need it wrapped up here.
I would not have enough money in the world, Vernon, to get you a gift. Trust me.
Well, all I like is that smile and that warm friendship that you have. That's enough gift. And talking about gifts, this Cooperative America is wonderful gift to people. It's to get people to know how to control their own destinies. So what do you guys have, National Co-op Bank? What do you all have for 2017? What's planning?
Well, we got a lot of things going on, obviously. I tell you, I thought about this yesterday. So much has happened since I was on the call last. And I'm really excited about going into 2017. We've had a great year. Obviously, most of the work that I do for the organization is within the cooperative and community development arena. So I think that we've had a great year in that regard because it's the part of the bank where we do a majority of our mission lending or work in low and moderate income communities. And so we've just had a chance to work with some great organizations, a lot of food co-ops. We've worked a lot with some cooperative CDFIs, community development financial institutions across the country. And so I'm just hopeful going into 2017 that we will continue to build upon that work and continue to impact the low and moderate income communities that we work in.
So what are some of the food co-ops? Where are they located?
Well, one is Clifton Market in Cincinnati, Ohio. We had a chance to work with them. It's a great project. We have 5 branches in southwestern Ohio. So obviously Ohio is very important to us, and we wanted to work there with a CDFI. And you'll probably hear me come back to this CDFI theme a little more and more just because of the crux of what I do at the organization is based by doing the work with these community development financial institutions. And so Clifton Market was a fine example. There's another great example of one that hits a little closer to home, and I talked about it before. It's the Renaissance Community Co-op there in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I happened to go to college. And it's just a great story of a community coming together. And while we didn't do any direct financing, I did lend some of my past government relations experience there. Mm-hmm. But working with co-op CDFIs like Shared Capital, formerly called North Country Development Fund, and Self-Help Credit Union there in Durham, this community in Northeast Greensboro was able to open this 10,000 square foot full service grocery store. And you're talking about a community, Vernon, that had not had a grocery store for 18 years. And so to be there on opening day in November was just extremely.
Why didn't you invite me? I would have loved to have been down there, John.
I tell you, it was an oversight. And as I always say, blame my head and not my heart, Vernon. But it was just a great. It was called a grand opening, but I would call it a celebration because it was just such a hard work by the community, predominantly African-American community who, with the help of the city of Greensboro and Self-Help Venture Fund, which I am honored to be the chair of the board of, as well as Fund for Democratic Communities and a few others, coming together to create this community-owned grocery store that is going to provide healthy food options to this community. 28 good-paying jobs, it's community-owned. And I am proud to say that I am owner number 1038, because the very first thing that I wanted to do when I got there for the grand opening was I wanted to join myself. And so anytime I'm back in Greensboro, I'm going to make sure that I stop at the Renaissance Community Co-op to do purchase a few things. My wife does most of the grocery shopping, and she wouldn't trust me in a grocery store, but I'll be able to pick up a few things when I'm in Greensboro again.
You get some water. I got some.
That's about it. I get some bottled water, maybe some paper towels. That's about it.
But let me just trust me with. For the people that didn't hear you the last time, this was an old grocery store or something that they closed down?
Yes, it was a Winn-Dixie grocery store that had been there for some time off of Phillips Avenue in this northeast portion of Greensboro, predominantly African-American. And for whatever reason, 18 years ago, and what I found out throughout the process of doing this, it closed not because it wasn't making money, but, just as organizations and companies do, it was doing some restructuring and it closed. And so for 18 years, it sat dormant. This entire shopping strip sat dormant. And the only thing that you had was a Family Dollar at the very end of the street now. And then the city comes in and builds this beautiful library. And so you have this beautiful library on one side of the parking lot. And then on the other side of the parking lot, you have this boarded up grocery store. And so residents would have to get on buses, many of whom are older Americans, and they'd have to get rides and take taxi cabs to get to some of the nearest grocery stores on Wendover Avenue or over on Summit Avenue. And so they all.
I guess I want to get this definition, and this is what we now call a food desert. The people don't have anywhere close by that they can go and get fresh vegetables and fruits. And for that matter, almost nothing except for a convenience store.
No. There was a market there, and I won't name the name of it just to be kind, that I walked into and turned right back out of just because of the smell in the market. And all they really had was a couple things of fruit. I wouldn't say that it was fresh, and anything in the world that had sugar in it, they had it, and that's not healthy. And so
it's unhealthy.
The community. At all. So the community came together and knew absolutely, positively nothing about a co-op or co-ops or the cooperative principles. And so what they did was they educated themselves. And it was so empowering to meet the board chair and so many of the other folks who were coming together to do this. But they needed money from the city. They needed money from foundations and other folks to try to help them get off the ground. And so as a employee of the bank, as well as board member of the Self-Help Venture Fund, I kind of just lent my past government relations experience to them, and we visited the city council several times. One great thing is that the store actually sits in the district of a city council person who is actually a A&T grad like myself, and it was really touching because the first time that I got a chance to sit down and meet with him, he talked to me about me coming to speak to him in spring of 2006, and he remembered that conversation vividly. So I immediately felt very old, number one, but the other two, I also felt very proud that maybe something that I said allowed Jamal Fox, who's an incredible city council person there in Greensboro, to want to go into public service. But, we worked with the city, we worked with the co-op, and the city was able to put in $250,000 of seed money to help the store open. And so, again, you can't put a price tag on how important this is. And I encourage any one of your listeners who happens to be in Greensboro, North Carolina, at any time to stop by the Renaissance Community Co-op to become a member and or to make a purchase to support, because it's one thing to open and all the work that goes into it. It's another thing to support and sustain the co-op. Yep. And so that's what I'm hopeful everyone is able to do. And so
what's the address there in Greensboro?
I don't have the exact address right in front of me, but it's on Phillips Avenue in Northeast Greensboro. If you go straight down Summit Avenue and make a right and make a left, you'll find it. And I happen to know Greensboro very well, having gone to school there.
So this is North Carolina A&T is in Greensboro.
Yes.
Historically black college.
Yes, HBCU, largest HBCU in the country, I might add. I have the address for
Larger
you.
Larger than how?
Vernon. Largest HBCU in the country. Largest HBCU in the country right now. I'll give you the address. It's 2517 Phillips Avenue, Greensboro, North Carolina, 27405. And
the Renaissance Food Cooperative.
Yep. And its mission is to create a democratically owned and controlled grocery store in Northeast Greensboro that provides all of Greensboro with healthy foods at an affordable price and has a commitment to locally sourced foods, community education, and dignified jobs. So I'm sure that you can see right there just, one or more of the cooperative principles within the mission statement as well.
About 4 of them. Okay.
Yeah.
I heard about 4. All right. Okay, so that was last Renaissance, and what I recall was, 1,000 people showed up and put in $5 or $10 each to get the seed money to get started? Or?
Oh yeah, early on, yeah. Now it's up to $100. So and you can pay for it over time. It doesn't have to be a deal where you drop 100 right when you join. You can easily do it in increments. And the day that I was able to join it, actually my colleague Brian Meisenheimer, who does a lot of our work in the grocery sector, was able to join me as well. So I quickly signed up as a member, and then I went and bought me a Equal Exchange coffee mug and bought some coffee. Many people know that Equal Exchange also is a cooperative. So I do what I can. I'm a member of the Weaver Street Co-op here in my home state of North Carolina, as well as obviously credit unions, cooperatives. It's amazing. And one of the things I want to say to you, Vernon, is that people in many cases don't make the correlation between community development and co-ops. And as I said to you before, a lot of the work that I do is with these CDFIs, which are administered by the CDFI Fund and the U.S. Treasury. And there are actually 3 cooperatively based CDFIs across the country, and I'd love to give them a shout out because we work with them a lot. One is Shared Capital. It's a national loan fund and certified CDFI. There's another one called the Local Enterprise Assistance Fund, or LEAF. It also works to assist cooperatives and social purpose ventures. And then last but not least, there is the Cooperative Fund of New England. And so, it also, too, is a community development loan fund that facilitates socially responsible investing in cooperatives. And so out of the 1,000 or more CDFIs that you have across the country, you have these 3 that are primarily based on working in community development around cooperatives. And that can take many forms, but in this case, with Renaissance, it took the form of a food co-op.
We got to take our first break here, John, and it's so much information. And when you talk, I can hear the enthusiasm and passion that you have for this work. But we're going to take our first break, and then we'll come back, and I will give a definition. You've talked about worker-owned co-ops like Equal Exchange and consumer cooperatives like food co-op that you just talked about. But we'll be right back and talk more to you about what you guys are going to be doing, the NCP is going to be doing in 2017. Please don't touch the dial. We'll be right back.
1450 WOL.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oaks. The program is Everything Co-op. The National Cooperative Bank is sponsoring this program. And you know that WL is a great, great partner because, as they just said, information is power. So we're trying to give you the information that you might need to help you to control your own destiny or improve your community, as this Renaissance Food Cooperative has done in Greensboro, North Carolina, in the neighborhood, mostly black neighborhood. And we have on the show with us this morning Mr. John Holdsclaw, who is the Vice President of Corporate Affairs at the National Cooperative Bank. John, you said a lot in the first 15 minutes. What I wanted to talk about really quick was the definition of cooperatives. I have it that a cooperative is a business, any business you can think of. The main 2 types are if the employees own the business, like you mentioned, Equal Exchange, then it is called a worker cooperative. And if the consumer owns the business and controls it, then it is, consumer cooperative. The people that use the products or services own it. And housing co-ops are examples of that. Food co-ops, one that you just talked about, Renaissance is an example of that. Credit unions are examples of it. And then we have marketing cooperatives and we have purchasing cooperatives. So there's all types of different forms that co-ops could be, but mainly, as your boss, Mr. Chuck Snyder, said, is people helping people. I like also what Dame Pauline Green, who was the president of International Cooperative Alliance, said. She said that co-ops help people to come out of poverty with dignity. Yeah. And so whether somebody's in poverty or you're just in a desert. Now, I want to give you a name of somebody, and I'd like to text you her telephone number. Her name is Tambra Ray Stevenson, and we had a screening of the movie Food for Change, and I met her. There's a group of people that she is working with that wants to start a food co-op, or at least they're exploring the possibility of starting a food co-op in Southeast D.C. that is a food desert also. Okay. So she's working with the city, and they have a committee that's working on that, and they're looking at doing a screening for Food for Change with Steve Alves produced, and he has been on the program too. But they're looking at doing this screening in sometime in, I think it was late January or early February. But I'll try to get you the information. I think you would really like. I've met a couple people that's working on that group. Please
do. You know, I would definitely welcome that. And you know what, Vernon, you're starting to see more and more across the country. For example, you just talked about the community in Southeast D.C., but you're also starting to see there's community in Minneapolis, a predominantly African American community in Minneapolis, who is almost in the same situation that Renaissance was, where they're trying to find ways to start a co-op there, food co-op. And so what we tried to do is we tried to, link them up with the folks at Renaissance to talk about lessons learned and some of the nuts and bolts. But, you really touched on the different forms of cooperatives. And, in a lot of ways, the National Cooperative Bank touches all of them. For example, I had a chance a couple of months ago to attend the Federation of Community Development Credit Unions meeting down in Texas. And so, here, a lot of folks know credit unions. I always find it amazing when I used to go on Capitol Hill and talk about cooperatives, and the staffers wouldn't know much about cooperatives, but I would ask them, well, are you a member of the Senate Federal Cooperative, a credit union, or are you a member of the House-based Federal Credit Union? And they say, yes, proudly. And I said, yeah, well, that's a cooperative. It's a cooperative. It's a credit union that is owned by its members. So you know more about cooperatives than you think you do. And so these community development credit unions, in fact, many of them are certified CDFIs, and they also do work in these LMI communities. And so we've worked very hard to establish partnerships with these CDCUs, as they're called, to either have a deposit relationship or correspondent banking relationship with them, but more or less on my side, to try to find ways for us to work together on transactions in their communities to help them fill the gaps because they're all doing great work. You talked about worker co-ops and equal exchange. We do a lot of work with oneworker.onevote.org and their organization, whose mission is to build a national network of unionized worker-owned cooperative businesses, and so, their whole deal is overcoming inequality, opportunity, mobility, and income. And so you're seeing...
You're talking about Michael Peck.
There you go. Yes, Michael Peck.
He's been on the show a couple of times. My only problem with Michael Peck, he says 3 hours worth of stuff in about half an hour. He has so much information. He is a wonderful guy.
I tell Michael all the time, I said, when you email me, I have to print those emails out. I just can't read them on my computer or on my iPhone because they're too long. So I have to print them out and get a highlighter, and because he makes such great points, but his wealth of knowledge is such that he puts so much information in him. But I'm so glad that he's had a chance to be on the show for a couple times. But those are two other areas, that we try very hard to work with cooperatives, be it credit unions, be it the support of the worker-owned cooperative movement. I was at the Social Capital Markets, or SOCAP as it's called, a couple of years ago. And this is just a collection of Vernon of foundations and philanthropic folks who who want to invest and provide grants and whatnot, to do good, Mm-hmm. And so I saw on the agenda, they had two very interesting things. They had one on housing co-ops, and it was led by, it's so funny. I know about our Twitter feed, but her name's escaping me right now. Local Vesting is the name of the book. And if you haven't had a chance to go out and buy it, please do. It's incredible. She spoke at our annual meeting a couple of years ago, and I apologize to her in advance for not remembering her name right now.
LOCO Vesting?
Local, yeah. LOCA Vesting is the name of the book. Or if you want to learn more or follow them, you can go at Local Vesting on Twitter to find out what their happenings are. But again, I apologize for not remembering her name. But they had that on the agenda, number one. And then number two, they had a worker-owned cooperative workshop as well. And I wasn't as surprised about the housing co-op one because that's pretty much been in the know. But I was surprised about the worker co-op presentation and workshop. And so I said, hey, I'll just go to that and see what some of these philanthropic and foundation folks feel about it. And lo and behold, it was packed. There were a lot of foundations there that wanted to learn more about the process and learn more about some of these worker-owned co-ops that are sprouting up all across the country. Even more so, I think that the City Foundation just recently, earlier this year, had a webinar on worker-owned co-ops. And so you're starting to see more interest as folks are obviously aging who own companies and may or may not have children to pass the companies on to, but are giving their workers the opportunity to buy or to cooperatively own these companies. And so, it does my heart good because I know going into 2017, and while it will be a very interesting year from a lot of different standpoints in the political arena as well as many other things, I do think that the one constant thing that will be this increase in folks wanting to learn more about the cooperative principles and worker co-ops and things of that nature. So I'm very excited about that, and I think that NCB's work will even be more prevalent going into next year because of this rise in the desire to want to learn more.
Yeah, and one of the things I heard at NCB's annual meeting from the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives, they said that 40% of the people that are starting worker cooperatives are brown or black. They're people of color.
Yeah.
And that did my heart good because one of the reasons I like and fallen in love with co-ops is because this is the way that I see that people that don't have money, don't have wealth, don't know how to create wealth. And the whole system of poverty, it's sort of intended, maybe by design or maybe it happens this way. But once you're in poverty, you stay in poverty. You dig further and further into the hole. You don't dig, out of the hole.
That's it.
And co-ops is a way of learning how to operate a business, learning how to work together, learning how to solve problems together. And there's going to be conflict, learning how to deal with the conflict. And when there's money made, you share the money. But the workers decide how that money is shared. And so I love co-ops and hope that more and more people will get involved with them. And the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives is one place to go. You also, the CDF.coop, Cooperative Development Foundation has some funding to help start some co-ops. So there's a lot of places out there to help if you want to get started. And if you can call John Holdsclaw at the bank, or you can call me if you have an idea about starting a business, any type of business, then we could sort of help lead you to the right places to get some support and help.
You're right. And so, again, that's what I'm getting a lot of. I'm getting a lot of people who are calling me. And, I tell you this, I also stood on the board of the Carolina Small Business Development Fund, formerly called the Support Center here in North Carolina. Incredible leader there, Linwood Long, and I happen to chair the Policy and Research Committee. And, they understand the cooperative piece. They do and want to find a way to do more work. I mean, they also do incredible work with veterans. They do incredible work with African-American and small businesses owned by people of color and whatnot. But
John, we're going to come right back. We've got to take our second break. I don't want to stop.
I got you. Thanks, Vernon. I got you. Talk soon.
We'll be right back.
$14.50 WOL.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes, cooperatives. We're talking about cooperatives. John, when we took the break, you were telling us about the Carolina Small Business Incubator or Development Center.
Development Fund, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so what I was saying basically was I'm working hard to use my approach there as the chair of the Policy and Research Committee to North Carolina as a whole, obviously with the exception of Renaissance, it's not I don't want to say it's not a co-op friendly state, but there are not a lot of co-ops within the state. Obviously, you have some pretty prominent ones like Weaver Street Market and Renaissance now, and you've got the Durham Co-op Market. There's one in Hendersonville, the Co-op Market. But besides that, it kind of ends. And so working with groups like Carolina Small Business, and then I'm sure you might know Thomas Beckett at the Carolina Common Enterprises that does a lot of work trying to develop and provide a lot of these emerging cooperatives with some of the background and help and nuts and bolts that they need to develop. I'm trying to do a little bit more in my home state here to see what I can do to boost those numbers. But what I don't want to downplay is just all of the various folks who are reaching out to me. There's another organization called it's run by Ron Hance, but it's a group of community development corporations based out of Baltimore and the D.C. metropolitan area. And I think Ron's been on your show before. But
I met with Ron just yesterday, and we talked about community conscious, creating with a conscious, and so we talked about housing co-ops, and he's doing some training. He's trying to create some training in 2017 to get more and more people involved. So,
and I told him he needs to have you as a keynote speaker at their one of their summits that they have in the upcoming years, because you would probably have some valuable information to impart to them. He feels strongly that a lot of the work that they're doing in Baltimore and for some of the communities that they serve could be, affordable, cooperative, or limited equity housing could go very far in allowing many folks in those communities to own, and have, although limited, have equity in the houses that they live. And so I'm glad that he's reaching out to you as well as to me, because I'm working to try to set up a call with him and some of our folks internally to educate him on the matter. He actually saw. He might have seen the film Food for Change when they showed it there in D.C. But he's really committed to learning more about the whole cooperative piece and what he can do or what their organization can do to help those in Baltimore. So
I think he did come. He came to that screening. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He definitely talked in great length about it and how impressed he was about it and whatnot. And he wants to purchase the film for the network so that they're able to see it at will. But I'm glad that he and you and I and others are all crossing paths. So that's good to hear.
I want to talk to you about, when you're talking about housing co-ops, the city of D.C., city-state, had their committee on housing and community development had a hearing on the how do you maintain housing co-ops, limited equity housing co-ops. And they gave examples of a lot of the problems that they are hearing. It's particularly board-based, where they don't have elections or they don't pay their vendor, they don't keep the place clean and so forth. And so they were looking for solutions, and I wanted to talk to you about the two solutions that I brought forth to them. One was to create marketing management at the least possible price, and I call it shared management. And I got this from, I used to manage some 4-unit co-ops, and they couldn't afford it. And so I ended up helping them to learn how to manage themselves, where somebody would pay the bills, somebody would collect the money, somebody would take care of the vendors. The four people, they would just share what happened. But I was thinking, well, perhaps I could still do the bookkeeping and the reports for them at a real nominal price. But it was also, the other idea was that we would have group meetings. One of the things that really kills property managers are all of these night meetings. So I was thinking maybe we could have a group of 5 smaller co-ops or bigger co-ops, whatever, meet on Saturday mornings or something. So that was how you get management and quality management at lowest price. And the other one was to create a report card. And this basically came out of the co-op metrics group. And when I went to them about doing this, their fees were way too high. So I'm working with the Potomac Association of Housing Co-ops and trying to figure out how to get other people involved. Every housing co-op would have a report card, and we would create it like on governance. Are they operating according to the bylaws, the loan docs, the house rules? Do they have their elections? Do they have their book of minutes? Do they have functioning committees with minutes? Do they evaluate themselves, evaluate the board, and also evaluate the management? And then under management, I've got, what's the brick and mortar like? Do a REACT type inspection. REACT is a HUD inspection, but have maintenance done completed within 5 days, regular maintenance and emergency within 24 hours, but measure it and see how well you're doing. And then also measure management. Are the files in order? Are the bills paid on time? Do you manage your waiting list? And are delinquencies less than 10% of the people are delinquent, and you don't have that many renters? And what's your savings like? And I know the bank is very big on this, but savings that we call replacement reserves. And what percent of your reserves should each housing co-op have? And when I mentioned this at a Potomac Association meeting, one of the guys said in their bylaws, it talked about 25% of their annual budget is what they should have. And I just thought that was way too low, but perhaps not. And the one I really want to get into is social programs. What kind of social programs does the housing co-op have? Do they have things for their seniors or for their children or for their families? And how do they work together on these things?
Well, I'll give you a good example, and it's now while it has a housing base to it, we've had an opportunity over the years to work with a CDFI called Rock USA up in the northeastern part of the country, and what they have is this. Listen, we all know that baby boomers now are coming of retirement age, and you hear about it on Capitol Hill and other places. Some people call it an age wave. Some people call it an age tsunami of folks who are coming online and retiring and whatnot. And so what Rock USA does, and as we get older, what do we want to do? We want to be able to age in place. We don't want to one of the saddest, I'm not knocking the program. One of the saddest things for me was seeing my 95-year-old grandmother in a nursing home before, regretfully and sadly, she passed away. But she would have rather stayed in her home and aged in place and whatnot. But what's happening with Rock USA and some of the things that we're doing with them is that they are creating cooperatively owned mobile park communities. And so what this allows, in many cases, some of the individuals who are older Americans, what it allows them to do is to continue to own while at the same time being a community that they are with other older Americans, like-minded older Americans who have the same struggles and the same sometimes illnesses and whatnot. And so they're able to come together as this cooperative and not only live together, but also try to work together to have the services that they need to help them age in place. And so, that's one of the social based things that we're doing from a cooperative standpoint. We're very proud of it because this year, the American Bankers Association, ABA Foundation, actually awarded us with a Commitment to Community Award for that particular project in the affordable housing category. And so, it covers a lot of various things. It covers the cooperative piece. It covers the social piece for us. I mean, there are other emerging cooperatives that are coming online. Now, and I don't know much as I should, but there are these home care co-ops that are coming online now, and you're starting to hear a little bit more about them. We have yet to finance or do any work with one, but it's something that we're tracking and keeping our eyes on as it pertains to home care co-ops. But if I would give you one, it would probably be the Rock USA example. And I know, and I'm 47 now, but in a few years, maybe I'll be moving to New Hampshire to live in one of these mobile park cooperatives so that I can be with other, I don't know if I'm a millennial, I don't know what I am. But,
you're in somewhere in the middle there. But
generation, X generation, Y generation, whatever I am, but I'd like to be able to live in a community like that.
Well, Paul Bradley, who is the president of Rock USA, has also been on the program, and we had a wonderful, wonderful conversation. And I'm going to reach out to him about this idea, about this report card of how to get people to really, really, really evaluate themselves to see how well they're doing, and then be able to share that with other cooperatives. I was thinking about a committee that is made up of different housing co-ops. I think there's 100 limited equity housing co-ops in D.C. Mm-hmm. It's a much larger number than I first thought. And if they could work together to look at each other and to help each other and figure out what's going right and what's going wrong, but that would mean sharing financials and sharing information, best practices. But Paul Bradley is doing really good. But it's not just, you don't have to move up to where they are, where they're all over the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
And
so, that is right. They are national. They're
a national program, and they're doing really good. I was only disappointed that they're not in West Virginia. They don't have a partner in West Virginia right now. We have a lot of, we used to call them trailer parks. They're called them mobile home parks now, and they could be real houses and look extremely good. But, there's a lot that we can do to help people help themselves, basically.
Well, you couldn't ask for a better one than Paul, to work with this on, number one. And number two, I definitely am surprised by the 100 number of co-ops in housing co-ops in D.C. at 100. But at the same time, if you even think about the solution you're trying to do here, Vernon, it's a cooperative solution. You're all coming together to try to find a way to provide this shared management or a checklist or things of that nature that could be uniform and agreed upon by all these cooperatives, many of whom have benefited from lesson learned, and many of whom can benefit from things that they don't know. And so, again, I applaud you for that effort, and in any way that NCB can help in regards to providing any knowledge or expertise from a financial standpoint and the financing of these and records and whatnot, we would be definitely happy to lend a voice to that.
Well, that was one of the reasons I was telling you, because I'm really impressed with what you and NCB does. So getting your brains on this one could be very, very helpful. And it also could help the bank, because people can see problems beforehand. That would be the idea, and then therefore be able to solve them working cooperatively.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've been tasked with, and let me know I am on time, but I've been tasked with this overall CDFI strategy and this outreach to these CDFIs. And listen, we're not a community development bank. We're not a certified CDFI. And I tell folks all the time, but I do feel strongly that we are a mission-driven financial institution. And that's, congressionally mandated in the law that created us. But over the course of years, it's become a part of our DNA.
It is your DNA, and
it is our DNA.
We're going to take our last break and come back and talk more about your DNA.
Yes, sir.
And probably I need to have you on another time here sooner than the last time. Okay. We'll be right back, everybody. Please don't touch that dial.
$14.50 WOL.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes, and we're talking about cooperatives with Mr. John Holdsclaw, that's Holdsclaw, who is the Vice President of Corporate Affairs for the National Cooperative Bank. John, we just had somebody call in and wanted to know how to get a hold of you.
How to get a hold of me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Contact information.
I can give my direct line at work as well as my email if folks would like to have it. My direct line at work is area code 202-349-7448. And then my email address, and I apologize, it's a long last name. It's J Holdsclaw, HOLDSCLAW @ncb.coop.
Okay, so it's J HOLDS CLAW.
Yes, sir.
At ncb.coop.
Yes, sir. That's it.
Telephone number for John is his direct number at work is 202-349-7448. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We were talking about the DNA of the National Cooperative Bank when we took our final and last break.
Mm-hmm.
And so we only have about another 13 minutes here, John. So let's pick what we want to talk about because you have so much that we can talk about. But you said it was a mission-driven bank. It was created to support cooperatives, and particularly, I think it was what it was called, communities that had problems.
Well, I mean, I think if you look at it, and it was chartered in the 95th Congress, and the original act was called the National Consumer Cooperative Bank Act, and so it was formed to deliver financial services to, at the time, obviously an underserved niche, cooperatives, housing cooperatives. But the part that when I talked about our DNA, that is the bulk of the work that I do, is that per the act, there was a provision there that we must make best efforts that 35% of all of our disbursements be in low and moderate income communities. And so you're talking about, I can't, like I always say, I can't stack up what we do in LMI communities against some of the larger banks in the country, but I will sure go toe to toe with them from a percentage standpoint. So last year in 2015, we did $290 million in low and moderate income communities. So you're talking about, $170 million in housing. We did $56 million in community development and expansion. An emerging thing for us now is renewable energy, $33 million in that. We've talked about Renaissance and some of the others, co-ops across the country, $10 million in food. And so small business, we do a lot of work in Alaska with Native Alaskan organizations. And so, it really is, like I said, a part of the DNA of the organization. And I get a chance to, and when I report directly to Chuck Snyder, the bank's president CEO, the team that I work the most with is the specialty finance team led by Ann Fedorchak and the rest of her squad. And I can't say enough about the work that they do across the country on some of these low and moderate income in these communities. I mean, these are, and in some cases, not always the easiest loans to do, and you have to be very innovative to get them done. But I watch how hard they work, and many of these loans that they do are ones that I bring in, or ones that I try to bring in from a business development standpoint. But the bank, I always say that the bank is probably the best investment that the federal government has ever made, just because of the return that we've given not only to LMI communities, but to cooperatives as a whole. I try to, as much as I can, visit True Value Hardwares or Ace Hardwares because they're purchasing cooperatives. And if they were not purchasing cooperatives, they couldn't compete with some of these bigger box hardware stores. And so, I try very hard to lead by example. And, I am a member of several credit unions here, as well as I'm a member of have a bank account with us here at the bank. And what people don't know is that because we are formed as a cooperative, and just like any cooperative that may have a good year and have patronage, NCB was able to give patronage in 2016 of up to $9 million to more than the 1,834 cooperative shareholders that we have nationwide. I think out of that $9 million, which could have been more stock, we gave $3.6 million in cash. And so if you're this cooperative member, small or medium, and you get this patronage check from being a member of this bank that is a cooperative, I mean, in many cases, that money can be pennies from heaven. And so, we try to live our brand and to the best of our ability. And anybody who may follow me on Twitter, you may see two things. You may see a lot of college football stuff, but you also may see a lot of things about #GoCoop. And I don't know if it gains me followers or loses me followers because it's not the most exciting Twitter feed in the world. I really don't really don't want anybody to know that I had eggs and turkey bacon for breakfast this morning, but I do want people to know that there's a really cool startup co-op in D.C. right now. And so, again, we just try to lead by example, and, our brand is very important to us. It really is.
Well, one of the things that I like about co-ops are the values and the principles, and the values of self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, equity, and solidarity. But the traditional values of honesty, openness, social responsibility, and caring for others. And what I see the bank doing, and people in the bank, and you mentioned Ann and Chuck and yourself and other people, Larry Matthew, you're really trying to help people have a better life, a better quality of life.
Yeah.
And
Chuck always says we want to do well to do good, and the more that we're able to perform as a financial institution, it just means the better work that we can do in a lot of these communities. I mean, listen, I don't have to go into great detail about my story, but I'm from very humble beginnings. I'm a proud Head Start child from a small town in North Carolina who went to college on as many grants and scholarships as I could go on, and finished, and one of the first ones in my family to do so. And so again, I'm a great example of it takes a village, a cooperative village, I might add, to build and make me the professional that I am today. And so shame on me if I don't live that and be a part of that. And so that's one of the great things. And I think you asked me this at the last telecast. Did I like my job? Did I like working?
I was just getting ready to ask you again. Yeah,
I know you were. I got ahead of you there, Brian.
Okay.
But I do. I really do enjoy what I do. I have fun. I work with great colleagues. I just, again, the impact that we're able to have, and when you see the numbers, and you go to these projects, and you meet the folks who are going to benefit the most from it, it really just puts a cherry on top of all the effort that you put into it. And in many cases, it's not easy work, and you can't get married to every deal, and some are approved and some are not. But at the same time, it doesn't keep you from trying, and so it's important. It's important, but I really, really enjoy what I do, and the opportunity to work in communities that like the one I grew up in, and it's important.
Well, I just want to get back to the values here a minute. It's volunteer and open membership. That's one of the reasons. It doesn't depend on your gender or your social background or your racial background, your political affiliation or religious. It just doesn't make any difference. The co-ops are open. Democratic member control. One member, one vote. We've already talked about that. As member economic participation, we've talked about that. Normally, just like in the Renaissance, it's $100 to join now, and it was $10 before. But if the Renaissance make money, or when it makes money, the members can decide to give back some of that money. Could be in Renaissance paper, so you can come in and buy stuff at the store. It could be in different kinds of forms, but you have a way of getting back if the entity is successful. Autonomy and independence is critical. You have to own and control it. Education and training and information, that's the fifth principle. And then co-op among cooperatives, we talked about that. And in the DNA of co-ops is concern for community. So this is what co-ops are all about, and the reasons that I really love them. I didn't learn about them. And this year, my next birthday, I'll be 70. So you're at 49. And it's sort of like, I don't know what retirement looks like. Some of the things we've talked about here in different communities. Yeah, perhaps I definitely want to live in place. I don't want to go to one of these. But I'm expecting, I'll still work another 30 years or so. Okay.
And I have no doubt that you will. Can you just honor, or just give me 1 second here to have two shameless plugs going into next year?
You got 1 minute. You got 1 minute to do it.
I'll say it fast. The 50th anniversary next year, celebrating a century next year for the Federation of Southern Cooperatives down in Atlanta. And look for more information to come out of the Federation there. Black farmers there trying to save land. And then last but not least, NCBA CLUSA will have some more information coming out about celebrating their 100th year and coming out about a summit in October. So just two shameless plugs of things that I think are very important as we look at 2017 and ways to, again, just promote and advance the cooperative brand.
I've already talked to Cornelius about theirs in the Federation. I went last year to their meeting. I didn't make it this year, but I'm planning on going next year, and I've told them I'll MC or speak or do whatever they want me to. They're always looking for money. So if you can go on federation.coop, you can donate money to the farmers to keep their land, and it's serious. So, buddy, thank you very much. You have a great Christmas and wonderful holiday and wonderful New Year.
Thanks so much.
And let's have a lot of fun cooperatively in this next year. I'm getting ready to go on travel, so I won't see you guys for a couple of weeks. We'll be putting some past ones on, and maybe this one, John, we'll run it again in the next couple of weeks. But thank everybody. Please work and live cooperatively.